Nana Shastra Vicharanaika Nipano Saddharma Samstapako Lokanam Hitakarino Tribhuvane Manyo Sharanya Karo Radha Krishna Padara Vinda Bhajana Nandena Mataliko Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghuyago Sri Jiva Gopalako Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghuyago Sri Jiva Gopalako. Offer my respectful obeisances unto the 6 Goswamis, namely Sri Sanatan Goswami, Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, and Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who are very expert in scrutinizingly studying all the revealed scriptures with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. Thus they're honored all over the 3 worlds, and they're worth taking shelter of, because they're absorbed in the mood of the gopis and are engaged in the transcendental loving service of Radha and Krishna. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastya Chadeshatarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. I wonder if someone could pass me a cushion for my feet. My feet are getting cold on the cold floor. Thank you very much. Very good. Yes, that's it. That's it. All right. Yes, so devotees, we have gone through the preface to Nectar of Devotion, written directly by Srila Prabhupada himself. Now we're going on to the introduction. I imagine it will take 2 sessions to go through the introduction. Let us see. Basically, the introduction is the first 12 verses of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And those 12 verses form what is called a mangalacharana for the whole book. Mangalacharana. Well, there's a verse actually in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela chapter 1 verse 22. Say mangalacharana haya trivida prakara vastu nirdesha ashirvada namaskara. Anyway, okay. A mangalacharana involves three processes: defining the objective, offering or requesting benedictions, and offering obeisances. Yeah, so three processes: defining what the book's about, offering benedictions or requesting them, and then offering obeisances. So here we have then the introduction, first 12 verses of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which are the mangalacharana for the book. So yes, And again, we'll go through paragraph by paragraph. As it happens, the majority, a lot of the paragraphs at least, let us say, put it that way, are just focusing on one of the 12 verses to keep it simple. So for example, the first paragraph of the introduction is related to the first verse of the mangalacharana. Yes. So let me translate. Well, what shall we do? I can just read the first paragraph. Invoking auspiciousness. Lord Sri Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, the reservoir of all rasas or relationships, which are called neutrality, passive adoration, servitorship, friendship, parenthood, conjugal love, comedy, compassion, fear, chivalry, ghastliness, wonder, and devastation. He is the supreme attractive form, and by his universal and transcendental attractive features, he has captivated all the gopis, headed by Tarika, Palika, Shama, Lalita, and ultimately Srimati Radharani. Let his lordship's grace be on us, so that there may not be any hindrance in the execution of this duty of writing the nectar of devotion, impelled by his divine grace, Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada. Well, so we just read this verse from Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, which is identifying the three processes, the three things that make up a mangalacharana. What would you say is here in this, what is actually related to the first verse, devotees? Is it defining the objective? Is it offering or requesting benedictions or offering obeisances? What do you say? You get me? Yes.
It's benediction.
Huh?
I could say benediction.
Well, there's a benediction. The main part is defining the objective. What is the objective? It's Krishna. Krishna and relating with Krishna in the different relationships. And actually, what Prabhupada has added there of asking for their blessings, Radha and Krishna's blessings for writing the Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada's added that in. And certainly, yeah, he's requesting a benediction. So it's got two of the elements of a mangalacharana. Yes, so this is actually the first verse of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. It's the very first verse of the book. Let me just read the actual verse itself. Akila Rasamrita Murti Prasrimara Ruchi Ruda Taraka Pali Kalita Shyama Lalito Radha Prayan Vidura Jayati. Let Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, be glorified. By virtue of his expanding attractive features, he subjugated the gopis named Tarika and Pali. Subjugated basically means, well, it conquered, but perhaps more appropriately would be brought under control. The gopis named Tarika and Pali, and absorbed the minds of Shama and Lalita. He is the most attractive lover of Srimati Radharani and is the reservoir of pleasure for devotees in all devotional mellows. So, here Prabhupada has sort of spelled it all out. What are all the relationships? He's listed them all out, all 12 of them. And for those of you, well, I don't know. Anyway, for those devotees who are doing this course, this seminar for Bhakti Shastri, you'll notice that the first question for this chapter, for the introduction, is what are all the rasas? So there you go. List the 12 rasas in Sanskrit or English. So there they are. They're in the in the first paragraph of the introduction, at least. What in English they're there. They're all there. All right. So it's a very nice verse, very beautiful verse, glorifying Krishna, who is the all-attractive personality. There are 3 levels of gopis mentioned here. Tarika and Pali, they are in, their rasa is of servitude, basically. Dasya rasa, they're servants. So they're more easily controlled or conquered like that. Then he absorbed the minds of Shama and Lalita. They're more advanced. They're more advanced than Tarika and Pali. But then, on the highest level is Srimati Radharani. And for her, Krishna is not the controller or just a very attractive person, but he is the most attractive lover of Radharani and is the reservoir of pleasure for devotees in all devotional mellows. So, so this is Krishna. This is Krishna in Vrindavan specifically. Here we're talking about Krishna in Vrindavan. Nectar of Devotion is particularly revolving around Vraja Bhakti, the devotional service of the devotees in Vrindavan. And this is of course, the topmost form of Krishna. Krishna's there in Mathura, he's there in Dwaraka, not exactly the same. Then he's there in Vaikuntha, and again, not exactly the same. But Krishna, so this book then is focusing on Krishna in Vrindavan particularly, which means you could say, and Prabhupada does say, Krishna in Vrindavan is Krishna at home. It is not Krishna at work. In Vaikuntha, or maybe not so much Vaikuntha even, but like the Vishnu, the Purusha avatars, Mahavishnu, Garbhadakshay Vishnu, Kshiradakshay Vishnu, they have a lot of things to do. Monitor the creation and monitor all the living entities. But this book is about Krishna in Vrindavan, and Krishna in Vrindavan is Krishna at home. Prabhupada gives the example of a high court judge, that when he is at work in the court, then everyone has to be extremely respectful. Yes, sir, no, sir, or even your worship, or something like that. Some real, like, quite strong honorifics they have to use. In some countries in the court, you cannot turn your back to the judge. So when you walk out, you have to walk out backwards. Really. So that's all very official. Of course, it's very important. And it's important for the judge, too. It's his work. A lot depends on him doing it properly. But then he goes home, and at home everything is different. When he goes home and meets his wife, she does not refer to him, she does not go, or maybe she does if she's a devotee, but she doesn't go, your honor, your worship, or words to that effect. And if she has to walk out of the room, she doesn't walk out backwards. In fact, she may sometimes sort of press him a little. Did you take out the rubbish? And so on and so forth. These types of exchanges. It's a whole different level of exchange and relationship and feeling. And it's higher. It's all higher in the sense that the judge, why is he working? He's working to support the home. Yes, to earn, to support the home. And after some time, he will retire from being a judge, probably, but he will not retire from being at home. So home is where the heart is. So Krishna's heart is in Vrindavan. There's a nice story that it's a story from a place called, what's it called? Oh, Krishna. Anyway, it's the place where, in Vrindavan town, where the bridge buses, some of the bridge buses received Krishna's messages after Krishna left Vrindavan. Something or other Gucci, what's it called? Anyway, at that place, well, one time, all the holy places got together and there was a big debate, which is the topmost holy place. And eventually it came down to a vote, and Prayag won the vote. And Prayag got pretty sort of chuffed, like, I'm a pretty together fellow, look at this. I'm the topmost of all the holy places, good for me. And he was kind of mocking the other holy places. But then he noticed something. Vrindavan was not there. Vrindavan had not accepted him as the topmost holy place. So he went to Krishna to complain. And he complained that we had this whole process voting for the topmost holy place, and I won. Prayag is the topmost holy place, but Vrindavan was not there. Why not? Vrindavan should acknowledge me. And then Prayag noticed that Krishna was crying. Krishna was crying. And Prayag was a little taken aback and asked Krishna, what happened? And Krishna said, it's all very well for you to be voted the topmost holy place. That's nice. Good for you. But with Vrindavan, it's different. Krishna told Prayag, Vrindavan is not exactly just a holy place like the various others. Krishna said, Vrindavan's not just a holy place. Vrindavan is my home, and home is where the heart is. And so my heart is in Vrindavan. So there's no place like Vrindavan. My heart is not in other places. So this book then, this first verse, is making the point that the whole book is focusing on Krishna, but not just Krishna, Krishna in Vrindavan, the topmost form of Krishna, and so many very personal and very intimate details about Vrindavan and about devotional service in Vrindavan, Vraja Bhakti. That's the subject of the book. So, yes. All right. So then, the second paragraph is a translation and sort of elaboration on the second verse of the mangalacharana. Let's just read it from the Nectar of Devotion. Let me offer it's Srila Prabhupada. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada and of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada, by whose inspiration I've been engaged in the matter of compiling the summary study of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. This is the sublime science of devotional service, as propounded by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who appeared 500 years ago in West Bengal, India, to propagate the movement of Krishna consciousness. So, in Srila Rupa Goswami's Mangalacharana, he offers his obeisances to Lord Chaitanya only, because Lord Chaitanya is his spiritual master and, of course, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yeah. Thank you for engaging me in this most extraordinary service. So Prabhupada is asking for blessings also like that, offering obeisances to Rupa Goswami and then Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, because obviously Rupa Goswami compiled the original book, and Prabhupada is translating it, commenting, doing the summary study on the inspiration and direction, at least indirect direction, of his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. Then the third verse, let me read the third paragraph. Srila Rupa Goswami begins his great book by offering his respectful obeisances unto Sri Sanatan Goswami, who is his elder brother and spiritual master, and he prays that Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu may be very pleasing to him. He further prays that by residing in that ocean of nectar, Sri Sanatan Goswami may always feel transcendental pleasure in the service of Radha and Krishna. Yes. So, well, Prabhupada offered obeisances to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta in the second verse. And here he's just sort of recording the fact that Rupa Goswami, in the third verse, the third paragraph, has offered obeisances to Sanatan Goswami. Of course, for both of them, both Srila Rupa and Srila Sanatan, for both of them, the main spiritual master was Lord Chaitanya. But Rupa Goswami also accepted Sanatan Goswami as spiritual master. Yes. Yeah. Even though, like we mentioned the other day, Rupa Goswami is generally counted as the most senior of the six Goswamis. Then the fourth paragraph is dealing with the fourth verse, but at considerable length. I won't read through the whole thing, but basically what he says, what Prabhupada is doing, and what Srila Rupa Goswami did also, was in a more general sense offer obeisances to the great devotees, the great acharyas, who have really, in terms of knowledge of devotional service, have made tremendous contributions. And then both Prabhupada and Rupa Goswami mention a particular type of contribution that they've made in a particular type of way. It's very interesting. Let us offer our respectful obeisances to all the great devotees and acharyas who are compared to sharks in the great ocean of nectar. They're compared to sharks. Why sharks? Well, it's the ocean of nectar of devotion. And sharks, sharks, first of all, sharks have no natural enemies or predators, except us wonderful humans, of course. We're predators for everyone, including ourselves, including each other. But otherwise, other than humans, it doesn't matter who. Even these killer whales, I don't know how familiar you are with these creatures, but they're bigger. The killer whales, or orcas, they sometimes call them, they're bigger than the sharks, but the sharks kill them and eat them. And then, of course, you get the big whales. But they're no problem for the sharks at all. And otherwise, the sharks have no natural predator. So like that, the great devotees and acharyas, no one can get at them. Someone who's like a lesser devotee, particularly a Kanishta Adhikari, if you are following our seminar on Nectar of Instruction, we spoke at some length about the Kanishtas, the Madhyams, and the Uttamas, these three different levels of devotees. And the Kanishtas are the beginners and the materialistic devotees. And if they're not careful, because they're beginners, and because they're lacking particularly two things, knowledge, and they're lacking faith, because they're lacking those two things, therefore it's possible for them to get dragged down, taken away from Krishna consciousness. And I think we all know sometimes it happens. Gee whiz, what happened a few days ago? Sure. About the worst case I think we've ever had, just about. But we've had other cases of devotees who are in the early stages, but somehow or other they got certain types of association, or whatever happened, and they just drifted away from Krishna consciousness and became involved elsewhere, either in some other less authorized, less authentic form of Krishna consciousness, or even just back to material life. But the great devotees and acharyas, that never happens to them. Rupa Goswami, the idea comes from Srila Rupa Goswami, and he's using the idea of the shark for very specific reasons, plural, and that's one of them. because they're never in spiritual danger. They're always on an exalted level of Krishna consciousness. Then, so he uses the example of the sharks in three ways. One is, we just mentioned, they never get caught. They never get caught in the fisherman's net, in any trap of Maya. Another is, they live only in the ocean, the Bhakti Rasamrita ocean. That's where they live. You don't find them living in some other ocean, the ocean of material politics, the ocean of material business, or whatever. You don't find them living in those types of oceans or places. They only live in the ocean. And the ocean means the ocean, Bhakti Rasamrita, Sindhu meaning ocean. Then the sharks, third thing, the sharks reject the rivers. The rivers. Some people feel that there are different processes, like spiritual type processes, which all lead to the one supreme goal. And so you can follow whichever process, or in other words, you can follow whichever river, and you'll get to the same place. You'll get to the same ocean. But unfortunately for them, little do they know, they really do know little, that, the impersonalists, the mystics, the mental speculators, all these different types of people, they may try to make this excuse for not becoming Krishna conscious, that we'll follow our process, we'll all meet at the same place in the end, but it doesn't work like that. Yeah, so these people, the other people, they inhabit the rivers, but some of those rivers don't make it to the ocean. Like even here in South Africa, there's the one river, the Okavango. Have you heard of that? Okavango? I think it's Namibia, or is it Botswana or something like that, or Congo? Angola, okay. And it's a big river. It's not a small river. But it flows into the Kalahari Desert, I think, and dries up. Did you know that? You didn't know that? All right. Yeah, so these rivers, the devotees, the great devotees, particularly the great devotees, they go straight for the ocean. And they only stay there in the ocean of nectar. Prabhupada says in the explanation in that fourth paragraph that the impersonalists are dwelling in the river water, which eventually comes to mix with the ocean. They have no information, however, that within the ocean, as within the river, there are innumerable aquatic living entities. Yes. Right. So they think they're going to merge in the ocean, but actually in the ocean there's many fish and different living entities, and ultimately particularly the sharks. And the sharks, one of the pastimes of the sharks is to eat the other aquatics. So the great devotees, through their preaching, they defeat whoever they are, the others, the people who are trying to follow some other process. So this is offering obeisances of the three types of functions of a mangalacharana. This is offering obeisances, and it's from both Srila Prabhupada and Rupa Goswami. Then the 5th paragraph, it's at the bottom of, page 6, at least in my version. It begins, Srila Rupa Goswami, praise to his spiritual master, Srila Sanatana Goswami, for the protection of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. From what? To be protected from what? Well, Prabhupada explains that to protect this Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the ocean of the pure nectar of devotional service, from the argumentative logicians who unnecessarily meddle in the science of service to the Lord. He compares their arguments and logic and their attempts to try to defeat Krishna consciousness. He compares them to volcanic eruptions in the depths of the ocean. And in the middle of the ocean, even a volcano can't really do very much. It can do a little something, but it can't do a lot. Not as much as volcanoes on the land. Yes, so like this, we also want that we don't get entangled with these types of people. We know that the Madhyamadhikaris, and we are meant to basically at this stage, more or less, be trying to become like very nicely situated Madhyamadhikaris. That the Madhyamadhikaris, they see 4 types of people, 4 categories. One category is Krishna. So they see Krishna and they worship him. They worship him and they try to develop a loving relationship with him. Then they see a second category is the devotees. And of course they identify with the devotees. They're my family. The devotees feel that the other devotees are our family. So they befriend the devotees and develop close and very warm relationships with them. Then they see the innocent, ignorant people who don't really have like severe negative attitudes towards Krishna consciousness or spiritual life. And they try to preach to them and help them. And then they see the envious, which includes these impersonalists and false logicians, mental speculators, mystics, and whatever else, the meditators, all these types of people. And they don't bother with them. They avoid them. You know, sometimes if you're preaching like in the streets, it may be tempting when you meet such a person who challenges Krishna consciousness, it may seem tempting to get into some debate. But at least in my personal experience, having done that foolish thing on numerous occasions, and having discussed with so many other devotees who have been in such situations, when you find a person like that who's staunchly situated in an opposing position and just will not accept and will not listen to Krishna consciousness, better to get away and find someone who's a little more accessible. When we used to distribute books in England back in the 70s, we would go out in groups, and we would always have a partner quite near, within, say, 20 meters or something like that, 25 meters. And if we had this practice that if our partner, if we saw that he was getting entangled in some situation of this sort, with some undesirable type of person who's really trying to argue with him and disagree and even be aggressive and even sometimes offensive. So we had a special strategy. We would walk up. There they are, the two of them in the middle of some sort of argument or something. And we would walk up and we would say in Sanskrit, Avajananti mam mudha manushim tanam ashrita. And the other person wouldn't know what was going on at all. But the devotee would understand, oh yeah, okay. Best not to get involved with those undesirables. Yes. Aha. So, where are we now? So, okay. We now, at least in my version, we go over the page. It's the 6th paragraph, begins over the page, and it begins, the author of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. It is that paragraph, if you have a version of the book on hand. So, right. This is the 6th verse of 12. The 6th verse of 12. And Srila Rupa Goswami, well, it's very interesting actually. Let me read it. The author of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami, very humbly submits that he's just trying to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world, although he humbly thinks himself unfit for this work. That should be the attitude of all preachers of the Krishna consciousness movement, following in the footsteps of Srila Rupa Goswami. We should never think of ourselves as great preachers, but should always consider that we're simply instrumental to the previous acharyas. And simply by following in their footsteps, we may be able to do something for the benefit of suffering humanity. So, Rupa Goswami expresses himself very humbly, and we can understand that Srila Prabhupada is also himself feeling very humble in presenting this great work, such a highly elevated work, which is, coming from just the topmost level. So, and of course, particularly for ourselves, who are we? Who on earth are we to feel that we may have some real qualification? We can establish the message of Krishna consciousness. Rupa Goswami is presenting himself in a very humble way, as if he is not even fit for doing this service. And we should also feel ourselves like that. Rupa Goswami, of course, he is qualified. He's extremely qualified. In our cases, it's probably true that actually we are not really qualified. But just somehow by some mercy, we've been given this service by Srila Prabhupada, directly or indirectly, to spread Krishna consciousness and to involve more and more people, to make more and more people into devotees. Yeah. So, but we should feel that it's only by their mercy that I may be able to do something. And if I do something, if there is some sort of worthwhile result to any attempt that I'm trying to make, to spread Krishna consciousness or even to do anything, how about worship the deity? Yeah, it's only because of mercy. Otherwise, it's not really for me, if we talk about qualification and real suitability. So then, let's see, the next paragraph is, beginning, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is divided into 4 parts. So that, devotees, is actually, it is, would you believe, devotees, it is 4 verses from the mangalacharana put together in one paragraph. That's what it is. Verses 7, 8, 9, and 10 are all sort of compounded together in paragraph number 7. And, you know, we did mention the other day, I think it must have been the first day, how Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is divided. And we did mention it, that it's divided into 5 parts. Actually, the classic description is what is presented here, that it is really divided into 4 parts. And let's stick with that. Let's stick with that. It is more really to the point. So, well, no, wait a minute, I'm sorry. The Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is divided into 4 parts, and we mentioned eastern, southern, northern, and western sides of the ocean, but within each side of the ocean, there are subdivisions. So this eastern side, which is what we're discussing through to chapter 19, it really has 4 sections. That's at least the classical viewpoint. You know, it's possible to say it has 5. You could even say it has more if you wanted, because, you know, there are definitely all sorts of subdivisions. But in the broad sense, there are 4 divisions. First is the general description of devotional service, which is from chapter 2. Where are we? No. It's the introduction, and first chapter is the general description of devotional service, this introduction that we're going through right now, and the first chapter. They're giving the general description. Then chapters from chapter 2 to 16, the subject matter is sadhana bhakti. From 2 to 14 is Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, and 15 to 16 is Raganuga sadhana bhakti, which, you know, is more elevated, but anyway, you know, we'll talk about it when we get there. But it is a form of sadhana bhakti. Then the third part is chapters 17 and 18, which are dealing with bhava bhakti, which we spoke about this the other day. It's part of sadhya bhakti, perfect bhakti, and not sadhana or practicing bhakti. And then chapter 19 is dealing with prema bhakti. These are the 4 classic subdivisions. Yeah, or subdivisions or waves. Yeah. The ocean has sides, and on each side there are waves. That's the idea. So that was that paragraph, and now we go on to the, what is it now? The 8th paragraph, am I right? It is, yeah. It's the 8th paragraph. The paragraph beginning, the authorized descriptions of bhakti or devotional service can be summarized in the following statement by Srila Rupa Goswami. First-class devotional service is known by one's tendency to be fully engaged in Krishna consciousness, serving the Lord favorably. So now the thing is, this is a very important thing. This is really a very important thing. We've already been through, what did we say, 10 of the verses. There's only 2 to go. But if we look at the text, then we see that there's a few pages, maybe 3 or something, pages more of text in this introduction, which are now, we understand, seeing there are 12 verses which are covered in the introduction, and that's the mangalacharana. It means that there's a really extensive description of these, or explanation, elaboration upon these other 2 verses. They're really significant. And actually, particularly the next verse, the 11th verse, is really important, really, really significant. And Prabhupada gets into a major elaboration on this 11th verse. The 11th verse is being discussed for the whole of the rest of the introduction, except the last 2 paragraphs. The last 2 paragraphs, there's the 12th verse. So what is this extremely special verse which is being discussed at such great length? Well, it's a very famous verse, and I imagine many of you, all of you, some of you at least, would be quite familiar with this verse. Here's the verse. This is the actual verse, the 11th verse of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Anyabhilashita shunyam, jnana karma dhyanavritam, anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhaktir uttama. Translation. Prabhupada does give somewhat different translations. I'll read 2. When first-class devotional service develops, one must be devoid of all material desires, knowledge obtained by monistic philosophy, and fruitive action. The devotee must constantly serve Krishna favorably as Krishna desires. Here's another translation directly from Srila Prabhupada himself, from some other place in his books. One should render transcendental loving service to the Supreme Lord favorably and without desire for material profit or gain through fruitive activities or philosophical speculation. That is called pure devotional service. So, we'll just get into it a bit here, and then we'll go into it. The main discussion we'll have tomorrow on this verse. But let's just go into it a bit right now until Instagram runs out. Yes, something like that. Okay, let us analyze this verse. Well, okay, before we do that, let me just tell you, this is considered by our acharyas to be what is called the paribas sutra of the whole nectar of devotion. The paribas sutra. What does that mean? Let me tell you what that means. Let me try to tell you what is the paribas sutra, if I can find the place. There's a specific description given by Srila Jiva Goswami, and let me just see if I can find it quickly. If not, I'll tell you in more detail tomorrow. Paribas. Okay. So here it is. This is Srila Jiva Goswami in Krishna Sandarbha. A paribas sutra is defined in the following way. Shri Radha Radhanath Shri Giri Govardhan Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. A paribas sutra explains the proper method for understanding a book. It gives the key by which one may understand the actual purport of a series of apparently unrelated facts and arguments. The paribas sutra is only stated once in a book, and it is not repeated. A single paribas sutra may govern the contents even of a very large book with millions of statements or arguments. Yes. Okay. That's interesting, isn't it? It's not going to be part of your any exam or anything, but it's just a really interesting point. So this is the Paribas Sutra of Nectar of Devotion, that defining statement, definitive verse, which is clarifying very briefly but clearly what the book is about. So Instagram is just ending. I will leave you in suspense, and let us gather tomorrow night and we'll go into it in depth. Srila Prabhupada Ki